Hey everybody, welcome to Dispatches, an adventure motorcycle ride aimed at breaking down the stigma surrounding post-traumatic stress disorder in the veteran and first responder communities. My name is Mike Terry. I am a 23-year veteran of the Canadian Armed Forces. I have been affected by PTSD since about 2001, and when I retired from the forces in April of 2018, I immediately started to notice that the effects of PTSD, the symptoms, just immediately got worse. So I started sharing my story on social media, my struggles with post-traumatic stress disorder and transition to civilian life. And then I bought a motorcycle and decided to tour Canada, sharing my story and encouraging others to share theirs. So yeah, that's how we got here. So this week, what I want to talk about is hypervigilance. And hypervigilance is something that it honestly affects a lot of veterans, affects a lot of first responders. And, if you don't know what hypervigilance is just this constant heightened state of awareness. You did a job for a number of years. It was very dangerous. You always had to be constantly taking stock of everything going on around you, and watching for threats, watching for changing situations. And essentially, it makes you very sensitive to your environment. It makes you very sensitive to all sorts of input and stimulus around you. So that's hypervigilance. And, it served me great while I was a soldier, as it would, because let's be honest, it's pretty important to be able to know what's going on in every situation, especially when they start to turn bad. Pardon me. So I'm going to talk about, hypervigilance now is just kind of this constant state of being. And, it just wears you down. Like, it is cognitively and emotionally exhausting to constantly be on and to constantly feel like you're looking for threats. And when there are no threats, it creates this really anxious energy. So I'm going to talk about this over the next 3 videos, and, ultimately my goal is to be able to, switch that hypervigilance off and on at will, to be aware of it and, to really be able to temper it and how it affects me. That's a pretty big task. We're talking about, 2 decades of conditioning. Humans are, we're genetically wired, for survival and to constantly be looking for threats to survival. So we are cognitively hardwired to focus on negatives. And you join the armed forces and you do a job like I did, and you really take that instinct and you hone it, and it's hardwired. So simply turning that off is a big task. So over the next couple of videos, I'm going to talk about some of the things that I do in order to not turn that off, instead of fighting that, hardwired instinct, and instead of, trying to deny it or trying to turn it off all the time. Again, that's a good end goal. I am going to share some techniques I found with how I employ it, or how I can change focus and energy of it, so that it's not draining and fatiguing. It's not, it's not this constant negative presence. You can actually turn it around and kind of flip the script on hypervigilance and use it for some good. So yeah, I'm going to take a couple videos and talk about that. What I want to talk about right now, though, is the idea of post-traumatic growth. And my buddy Ryan Carey, he really, he's a big believer in this. I believe in it too. I don't think he coined the term, but definitely, I'm the one who, or he's the one who kind of got me into seeing it as, in its common usage. And, that's looking at it and saying, yeah, does hypervigilance suck? Yeah, does it ever? I can't go out and, sometimes just going out to a restaurant, and being around even, close to people you care about can be absolutely overwhelming. You're always kind of scanning, cataloging, inventorying everything going on around you and interpreting it. And when you get around a lot of people are in your space, or there's a lot of movement. Noise is a big trigger for me. It can be absolutely just exhausting and overwhelming. I think probably one of the worst is there's a restaurant in Barrie called Jack Astor's, and I know it's a big chain. I've only ever been in that one though, and that restaurant is, they've got the space jam-packed because they want to, put as many people in there as they possibly can. That's good business. There's loud music playing. There are like multiple screens everywhere, and people are talking, and it is just this assault on the senses for me. And, doing what I did for 20 years, lots of gunfire, explosions, riding around in armored vehicles, my hearing isn't so great, and I do struggle to keep up with conversations in, really, really noisy environments, a lot of background noise and clutter. So, you add that to it. If I'm trying to talk to whoever I'm there with, it's just massive amounts of overstimulation and frustration, and it's pretty overwhelming. So, but driving in traffic, all sorts of different social situations, just anywhere that you're in a high stimulation environment can be really overwhelming. So, that part of it sucks. PTSD sucks, disassociation, episodes of disassociation, bad dreams, trouble sleeping, trouble with relationships, troubles maintaining connections, a million things that you have to deal with, and it sucks. But on the other hand, it does have its gifts, and hypervigilance has its gifts. So as I, especially as I traveled around, riding across Canada, and just in general, you see lots of people who, they're just kind of floating through life with kind of no situational or environmental appreciation what's going on around them, no spatial awareness. And I've seen it over and over again. I see these close calls of people driving, not necessarily with me, but just in general. And, I also see, almost missed my turn there, talking about not being aware. Look at me go. You see people who they are just kind of out there floating through the world. They're just not aware of what's going on around them. You see them have close calls. They don't even know it. Or you can see amazing things happening right next to you, and they don't see it. I remember once I was sitting at a construction site, stacked up in traffic, waiting to go, and about 50 feet over to my left, there's this pond, and it's beautiful. The water is it's just like glass, and this osprey swoops in and grabs a fish out of the water and takes off with it, and I'm like, damn, that's like that's the coolest thing ever. Like, that's awesome. And I look around at the other people in the cars, and you just see these blank faces, and they got their face stuck in a phone, and that they didn't see any of that. They completely just missed that event. So being hyper vigilant also, you see the good and the bad, and all the struggles with PTSD and hypervigilance, I would not trade them for this kind of blissful situational ignorance that you see a lot of people exist in. They're just happy to float through life. They're not aware of what's going on around them, and it really is kind of shocking to me that, people leave so much in their life up to chance, good and bad, and they leave themselves open to being victims of chance. You see people, or you hear people who they're just all, woe is me, nothing ever goes my way, I just have all this bad luck. And it's like, well, are you paying attention to what's going on around you? Because if you're not, everything's going to be a surprise. You're never going to see anything coming. And yeah, you'll probably feel like nothing ever works out. So, I just really wouldn't even trade all the experiences, all the struggles with PTSD and hypervigilance, all of the, the grief and loss and all those experiences throughout my life, you know, I wouldn't trade any of them to just be kind of content and not dialed into what's going on around me. So, you know, you got to look at that and say, okay, post-traumatic growth, you know, finding the good and the bad, and, you know, really appreciating that as a gift, because I've seen a lot in the world that has just been absolutely amazing. And I can't imagine that, you know, if I'd had a more normal life, you know, would I just kind of be floating through life, and I wouldn't see all the amazing things that are around me to appreciate? You know, would I just kind of wait for things to happen, good and bad, and then just kind of roll with it? And I got to be honest, that doesn't sound like a life to me. And you know, no judgment on you if that sounds fine, or if that's the life you lead. Cool, you know, you do you. But I just wouldn't trade it. So anyway, guys, that's what I'm going to leave you with this week. Next week, I'm going to talk about how you can employ hypervigilance. You know, you can give it an outlet. And yeah, so take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and I'll see you next week. Cheers.